I'm Veronica Schmoody. Some of you in the group already know me. I have a love of photographing typically abandoned places, forgotten places. The more desolate, the more grimy, the more dirty and forgotten I'm drawn to. But recently I had the opportunity to join a friend from Ghent and go on a trip to Lviv, Ukraine. Of course, yeah, I didn't say no, obviously. Um, and it was such an experience. But the photos I'm about to show you, so I'm going to start going a little back, weeks before war, into my first trip to Ukraine, and then that will go into the current trip or the trip I just came back to in February. So 3 weeks before war, last weekend of January, and that's me. I got to go to Chernobyl. And let me tell you, as an urbexer, someone who loves and enjoys abandoned places and history, especially places with a dark past, this was like my Disneyland. This, of course, is Dugga Tower. We went at the end of January. It was average temperature in Chernobyl was close to minus 20 Fahrenheit. It was pretty cold, but we had such an amazing time. This is the famous Ferris wheel. I'm sure plenty of you have seen photos of this. Um, this park actually never got to open. It was built and it was scheduled to open, and then, well, the reactor melted. During my trip, the first time into Ukraine and experiencing Chernobyl, it's pretty amazing the amount of wildlife that has like reclaimed Chernobyl. I saw everything from full wolf packs. We saw moose. We saw elk. Um, lots of stray dogs and cats, not abandoned, all taken care of. But unfortunately, when I went, Belarus and Belarus troops were already at the border of Ukraine. Guns aimed, military exercises being performed as I was there. And from one day to the next, I could feel the tension. My first trip into the Forbidden Zone, no one looked at my documents. I was with professional guide. And you need one, even if you're stalking Chernobyl, and stalking is a whole like subgroup of people that illegally enter Chernobyl, but you're always paying someone to help you get you through. And yeah, you never want to travel to Chernobyl without a guide. This is more of the park that never opened. Um, can I take, I mean, yeah, if you guys have questions, I don't know. I guess maybe it's probably best to save them for the end. So this is I made notes. This is the Azure swimming pool. So this is the sports center. So you went there to swim, they had a full gym, and now the building is obviously completely abandoned. That is the Palace of Culture. This housed movie theaters. It housed a performing arts theater. Unfortunately, it was kind of off limits to the legal tour, but I managed to peek my head in and get some shots. Unfortunately, I didn't include them because my work's crazy and I only had a small amount of time to get this presentation together. This is the Pripyat Cafe. It was where you got your coffee in the morning, where you got your croissant or whatever you wanted for breakfast. Currently in Chernobyl, uh, there's 300 people employed, and you can only work in Chernobyl 3 months at a time. So it's 3 months on, 3 months off. And that is the reactor. So during this trip, I was supposed to have a full tour of the reactor, but thanks to Russia and Belarus, That didn't happen. Um, Day one, when I entered, again, it was no problems with paperwork. The second day, they noticed a misspelling in my last name, and I was greeted with full-on assault rifles. It wasn't a joke. They took their job very seriously. And unfortunately, my trip into the reactor got canceled because of, well, war. This building was a hospital that specialized in maternity. This is one of the places that are generally off limits to tours. I may have had to bribe my tour guide a little to take me in here. But yeah, I mean, I, I have to say it's like really creepy and surreal to see all this maternity stuff just left behind. And there were rooms full of like cribs and chairs with stirrups. It's like, yeah. This is in a small village in the exclusion zone, and this was the local hospital. And that's a gurney still left. And the paperwork's in Cyrillic, so I don't read Cyrillic. But this is one of the first stops that we stopped at when entering Chernobyl. That's my friend Christian. Yes, he's attempting to eat radioactive snow. Did he actually eat it? No. And he was my partner in crime on this trip. An abandoned toy car that sat in a playground. So at the end of our trip in Chernobyl, our guide introduced us to this woman between Yuri, the tour guide, and my friend Christian. Her name was Maria. Maria has passed away since war has happened because of the stress. This woman was famous. Everyone that has toured Chernobyl, every film group, everyone that's made documentaries, they all stopped at her home. Her hospitality was mind-boggling. Like from a distance, it looked like she lived in an abandoned shack. And then you step into her home, and it was so warm, inviting, and comfortable. And so was she. While we were ending our trip and we stopped there, she had a problem with her antenna for her TV. Well, between myself, a union stagehand, and my friend Christian, who's a engineer specializing in electronics, we helped get her antenna up and running. There's Babushka. Unfortunately, these four images are from my cell phone, so I couldn't get the antenna, the full antenna in the shot. But she was so happy to see the news. And unfortunately, the news was nothing but Russia is about to enter Ukraine. That's us. Celebrating that we made the babushka happy. So then she put out a huge spread for us. 3 bottles of vodka later, all the food was grown at her home in Chernobyl. So yes, did I eat radioactive tomatoes? I did. The bread she made herself, the bulgur wheat was grown by her, and it was an amazing spread, and I still live to tell the tale. Um, it's sad that she's no longer with us. She left behind 3 sons, two that are in active duty, and I hope are still alive. So we start current day Ukraine. This is me and my friend, David Mimbo. He is Flemish from Ghent, Belgium. We've known each other for many years. We do lots of abandoned buildings together and have toured parts uh, of Europe together in search of abandoned buildings. He was the one who brought up that, hey, I'm going to Lviv. Would you like to join me? I was like, hell yeah.
So,
So,
excuse me, Veronica,
yeah,
we do have a question from Ben
yeah, yeah.
Zuckerman. He said, Ben Zuckerman asked, were you free to go wherever you wanted in Chernobyl?
So, no, Uh, there's ways to get around that though. So when I looked for a guide, I reached out to friends of mine already in Eastern Europe who are professional tour guides in search of someone that I can pay to look the other way. So some of the places I got to visit in Chernobyl were because I tipped. And there are illegal ways into Chernobyl, but even the illegal ways cost you money. There's a whole video game series called The Stalker. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's all based on illegally entering and living in Chernobyl. And even that takes money. Um, Anywhere in Eastern Europe, money talks. Some of the like a lot of the buildings are off limits due to the concentration of radioactivity, and some are just so dangerous. It's a risk. It's a liability for them to let you in. But if you tip your guide $50 and a couple bottles of vodka, that seemed to do the trick. Well, $50 in Ukrainian money, but which I think is like 1,000 in their currency. So this is Lviv, Ukraine. Lviv, Ukraine, the city of lions. Lev, meaning lion. And this wreckage was actually a piece of wreckage pulled from war. And they regularly have throughout the country and throughout Europe pieces of wreckage pulled from war on tour to educate people what's happening. Because you can't fathom it until you actually see it. And I got nowhere near or close to war, but what I saw was life-changing. And to think that, so this vehicle, people died in. And it's a reminder that, of Russian aggression as well as your sons and daughters are dying for your country. And this wreckage is what greeted us first thing in the morning. We traveled from Warsaw by bus into Lviv and never travel with a Westerner who hasn't experienced travel in Eastern Europe. We had problems getting in. So when we left Poland and we're entering Ukraine, our bus driver was Serbian with a Serbian passport and had lots of problems entering Ukraine. Serbia has ties to Russia. My my Flemish friend had no clue what was going on. And it held us up for about 3 hours. So the whole journey was 10 hours on a bus. That's a close-up of the wreckage. Our hotel was facing this direction, looking at that wreckage. This is the Opera House of Lviv, 17th century structure, Neo-Renaissance. When I was back in Poland after I left Ukraine, I actually ended up meeting the celloist for the Lviv orchestra. And when I return, and I do have plans on returning, will give me a full tour. And for those that don't know me, I work in theater for a living. This is part of St. Andrew's Church. This saw soon after I left, March 24th, missiles and drones were fired into the city of Lviv, and part of the structure was caught on fire, along with the monastery that was connected to it. And this is a UNESCO site, and it's a church. So it's still suffering from it. I'm not up to date on how much they were able to repair. Yes. Huh. Are you okay?
We never changed your name.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's okay. They know who I am. You guys know I'm Veronica, right? Yeah. Even though it says Eileen.
Veronica,
Uh,
we do have another question here
yeah, yeah, sure.
from Ken Johnson. He says, "Did you wear a radiation badge, and how dangerous were the radiation levels?"
Oh, so in Chernobyl, the radiation levels are about the same amount you get on a transatlantic flight. So you can't stay in Chernobyl any longer than uh, 3 months. And for tours, they limit you to 7 days max, unless you have press credentials. But yeah, no, radiation levels pre-war were low enough where you don't have to worry about it. It's just like yeah, it's like flying on an airplane. But since Russia invaded and when Belarus came into Chernobyl, because it was Belarus troops, not Russian, they started digging in the Red Forest. And anyone who dug in the Red Forest is now dead or dying. Because a lot of the radioactive material is buried. Entire villages and homes and apartment blocks were all leveled and buried to contain the radiation. And unfortunately, when they started digging into Red Forest, yeah, that changed. So radiation levels have spiked. There's also been a recent penetration of the sarcophagus that covers uh, the actual reactor, and that also leaked out more radioactivity. And it's still feared that it will again be hit and targeted. And if that's the case, then that doesn't just mean death to people in Ukraine, that means death and cancer to a lot of Europe. Anything else?
Um, there are a couple questions, but
Yeah,
I'm wondering if it would be better to hold some of these until you're done, and then we can let you sort of go through your whole presentation and then get that done, and then you can take
yeah.
questions. What do you think of that?
And that's great to me.
Okay, go with it then.
So this is the City Hall of Lviv. You can actually go up to the tower and visit. It's a lovely building. Uh, so for this, I actually focused more on just general like street scenes. This is just a alleyway of a little marijuana shop that sold CBD because marijuana is not legal. Actually, CBD isn't even legal in the Ukraine. A worker cleaning up, um, even though there's a curfew in all of Ukraine, the curfew, I believe, is 10 p.m. until 5 or 6 in the morning. All power cuts off. Everything is dark. Um, but yeah, people still go out and party. And this woman was cleaning up the aftermath of the night before. I think we came in on a Monday, and weekends are big for Slavic people and parties. So it took me a minute to realize once I hit Lviv that it it didn't dawn on me at first that why are these buildings covered? And oh wait, it's a country at war. So many of these buildings are have makeshift like covers on the windows, metal protecting, windows, doors, historic parts of the building. And this is part of St. Andrew's, the church that was hit in March 24th. Just a street scene in Lviv. I mean, it was funny that, I mean, not funny in a funny way, but that life just went on as normal. People were just living their lives as the best they could, even under constant threat of being bombed or hit by drones. Lviv is definitely a city of murals. There are plenty of them. The Woman in Blue is a new mural, and there's been new murals coming up through, being painted throughout the city as resistance to the ongoing threat of Russian bombing. A tram. I love how the woman looked at me when I took the photo. And it was funny, like people really wanted their photos taken. They loved the fact that we were there with cameras, photographing the city, photographing the people, meeting the people, trying to talk to the people. And so many stories. And I got a few coming up. Again, this is part of St. Andrew's, the church that was hit on March 24th. So while I was in Lviv, I volunteered. And one of the things I did was make camouflage netting. Camouflage netting is very specific. You know, whether it's fall, spring, summer, the colors are very specific and they need to be woven in a very specific pattern. And this they use to confuse drones. This net covers villages, military equipment, it protects people, it protects their military, it protects anything of importance and confuses drones. And I spent several days making this netting, and surprising, there was a number of American citizens there hoping to get citizenship through volunteering. And that's something actually now Ukraine is offering. If you go and volunteer, you can stay as long as you want. And then if and when war ends, you will be considered for citizenship. This was specifically winter net, thus the 50% gray, 50% white. So this specific spot was run by this babushka, this grandmother. She actually learned English just to deal with the influx of Americans that wanted to come and volunteer. I mean, she wasn't fluent, and she appreciated you learning some Ukrainian, but she could talk to you and give you the basics on how you need to weave the fabric. And yeah, I plan on actually going back to this specific group and volunteering for the month of March. These are the hands of the Scotsman. So this gentleman, in his 60s, late 60s, maybe early 70s, had a family, had a life. His wife passed, his kids were grown, and he was sitting in Scotland thinking that he needs to do something else with his life, something that has a little meaning. So he picked up his bags and came to Ukraine. And he does 3 months on, 3 months off, because unfortunately his government doesn't allow him to stay in Ukraine. So every 3 months he travels back to Ukraine, and he already did this for 2 years prior to when I met him. The Scotsman is to your left, and that's one of the babushkas that runs this little factory of drone nets. And that's the pile of ribbons that you have to weave through the netting. It's a mixture of gray and white. And notice the American flag. And they hang up all the flags of people from different countries who have come to volunteer. And yeah, I mean, this was truly an experience for me. Not only were the babushkas like very helpful and knowledgeable about how they operated was this well-oiled machine. And the babushkas kept you there by cooking and baking for you. Oh my God. There was everything from daily goulash to all kinds of like bread, baked goods, all homemade, which is another reason why I want to go back and volunteer with these people. One of the other volunteer things I did, so there's a group called uh, International Volunteers for Ukraine. They're based, they're an American-based company that's very mismanaged. Um, they try to be in charge of distributing aid to where aid is needed, but they seem to let a lot of aid just sit, when it could be used immediately by other people. For instance, I was in their office talking to them and they had cases and cases of latex gloves. Well, medical professionals can't use latex gloves that are out of date. These were, and these are only out of date by a few months. They just let them sit there instead of giving them to an animal shelter or a food prep station, somewhere else where these gloves could have gone to use. Um, Here, we were building in this outside this former abandoned orphanage dog kennels. I work with tools regularly. I mean, I've built stages, I've built scenery. We were supposed to build dog kennels, and I had to teach someone how to use a level. It was a bunch of young white kids that came from everyone I met for this organization, from families that, well, if shit hits the fan, they can be bailed out. And no one took this job seriously, and it was sad. It was like they were all there just for to say I've been in a country at war. And it was, yeah. That was the building, which houses the chicken coop, and which hopefully by now, I was there in February, houses the dog kennel. Ukrainians, even though they love their pets, they believe in separation between like animal living space and human living space. That is where they were attempting to build the dog kennel. I had to explain what a subfloor was. I know, right? I have Eileen laughing in the background. So first of all, there's many a problems. Like the roof leaked, the floor, like the wood underneath was rotted because it's on wet ground. It wasn't lifted above the ground. Um, yeah, and they were attempting to build a dog kennel on this. Those are chickens, the chicken coop part. Those were someone's dinner. That's the doorway, and obviously the lumber and the chicken wire to build the dog kennels. Now this building, this is what I'm closing out with. I got a chance to go to this former abandoned orphanage about an hour outside of Lviv. This orphanage was right next to the jail that housed the worst of Russian offenders. But the orphanage housed all the refugees from the hardest hit regions. The majority of them were women my age and older, in their 50s and older, and children. The size of this orphanage is probably larger than the Pennsylvania Convention Center here in Philadelphia. It was massive. I heard some of the hardest stories in this orphanage. This room actually is all donations from all over the world, and it's meant to set up as a shop to give some normalcy to those people that are living it. I had 5, 6, 7-year-old children translating from their parents, from their mother and their grandmother, stories of gang rape by Russian soldiers in front of their children. One story in particular, I may cry. Um, there was a woman. She was heading outside to meet her mother, and as she's walking towards her, she was hit by a drone. She was still alive. Ambulance came. No infrastructure. Nothing you can do. There's nothing that they could do except take away a dead body. So her mother was still breathing, in shock that nothing can be done. Ambulance left. She went off to go grab flowers to place next to her dying mother. A second drone hit and blew her to bits. There was a 7-year-old kid, 7, maybe 6, little kid translating this for me. And they weren't crying. Like it was like the bravery of these children to tell these stories and or translate these stories to me and just it was definitely something that was life-changing. This is only part of that orphanage. It was massive. Um, yeah. I'm kind of leaving this on a sad note. I mean, it is a country at war. Questions?
So let's start with the ones that were in the chat.
Mm,
Um, go back to where we had left off after asking, did you wear a radiation badge? Um, Linda was asking, why the 3 month limit?
mm, mm. Even though radiation levels are at like transatlantic air flight levels, if you're exposed to that for longer than 3 months, you can become sick.
Hmm.
And so it's a safety precaution.
Um, Ken picks up 3 months. What happens to the local citizens that do not leave?
So actually, like Maria has been in the exclusion zone well before Chernobyl happened and well after. There are people that refuse to leave. Um, if you're in the working area of the power plant, because it's still operational, there's still people that maintain it. There's a crew of 300 people and 3 month shifts that maintain that facility and those grounds. Um, but if you're there for any longer than that, radiation levels can become deadly. Long-term effects.
If I may, Jay Jeffries
Mm,
ventured an answer, and let me know what you think of this, or let
mm.
us all know what you think of this. He says they will develop higher rates of cancer if
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're
exactly.
longer than 3 months.
Yeah,
Three.
yeah.
So I was actually a radiation health physicist in the Navy,
Oh, wow.
and older people don't have to worry about genetic effects
Mm,
and later generations. So that's why they let the older people return.
mm.
Younger people have to worry about genetic effects to their kids.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And that's very true. Yeah. And I think the majority of the people that work on the reactor are much older. And then those who've stayed already have had families.
So there's two radiation limits. One is for the general populace,
Mm,
and the other one's for a radiation worker. And the radiation workers allowed to receive more because for the rest of their life they're going to be monitored.
I didn't know that. I mean, I figured they would be. I would hope so.
Another question from Scott Breakstone. That's a
Mm.
new guest. Hi, Scott. Welcome aboard here. He asks, did you encounter and interact with credentialed Western press? And if so, how did that go?
Oh, well, my friend David is Western Press, well, Western Europe. Um, uh, he does freelance for Politico. Uh, so he's the only, I mean, I went with him and I didn't encounter any other press when I was there. So when I was in Chernobyl, that was at the end of January 22, and then February 24th was when Belarus entered Chernobyl. And when I went back in February, yeah, it was just the two of us I saw with a camera and documenting and going to these places in Lviv. I think a lot of people are drawn to Kyiv, and he's going to Kyiv actually in September. I've decided not to. Uh, I mean, first of all, if something happens to me, I'm just a burden on an already like flawed infrastructure due to war. And I don't want to be someone's burden. I want to be a help. I want to, be of use. So, yeah. But yeah, my friend David is press.
Hmm. So now we're pretty much caught up with the chat window questions. We ought to probably turn it back over to folks. And I know Mike Silverman has a question coming up for you. Mike,
Oh,
you want to
oh,
just ask Veronica?
Yeah, sure. So,
hi.
hi there. Really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. I suck at public speaking, so.
Uh, yeah. So, on your most recent trip, especially, what are people's attitude about Russian people, about Russia? What do they make of this? Is this a gulf that is, forever created between their peoples?
So, everyone I have encountered and spoke to on this most recent trip weren't focusing on their feelings of Russia or Russians in general as much as just telling their own story to me. Like, for instance, with the orphanage, I mean, they were telling me their stories and their fight and how they got to this orphanage. And like the stories of gang rape and, death. I because I'm not press, I mean, I didn't want to be intrusive and ask people their feelings. I let people tell me if they wanted to, and I tried to be as thoughtful as possible when taking photos. Um, I mean, the last thing you want in a funeral procession is, someone popping up the camera or, or just shoving a camera in your face. And I'm sure they get a lot of that, especially with the rash of like wannabe photojournalists that are going to Ukraine. And I had a chance to photograph all that stuff, but I have no outlet for it, and those photos need to be in a place that um, are more useful than my website or a Zoom presentation. No offense, but you know where I'm getting with that. But yeah, uh, unless someone told me about their experience at Russians, I didn't ask. And I think that the general feeling and census is very anti-Russia. Anything else? Oh, wait, I got one more slide. Oh, that's my website.
Well,
I know.
Veronica, I have an observation and I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
The observation, or you are an incredibly gutsy lady. You're my hero. Why?
Oh,
The question is, you go to a country in a devastating war, you go
yeah.
to an area of that country that had one of the worst nuclear accidents in history. Why?
Oh, well, look at my Instagram. Maybe they'll. So, I wanted to be photojournalist very early on, and life just didn't work out for me that way. That's a whole nother story. But first of all, I've always been drawn to Eastern Europe. Love Eastern Europe, the people, the attitudes, their values, the food, the coffee culture. Oh, and I love coffee. The rakia, the vodka. Um, but I've always gravitated towards conflict zones. I've lived in Belgrade, Serbia for a year and a half. I spent months in Sarajevo. I've spent months traveling war-torn parts of Croatia, and there is one abandoned area that I used to live in for a month every year called Kupori. Um, that's a whole nother Zoom. And that will actually be the topic of focus for the next website. What layout is Kupori, Croatia? But yeah, I've always been drawn to conflict zones and abandoned military structures. And Chernobyl is like the Disneyland for people like me. I mean, I'm not making fun of or light of the people that died by any means. And but it's thrilling on an unexplainable level.
Well, you may not be a professional journalist, but you put most of them to shame. This was an absolutely amazing presentation.
Oh,
Thank you very
thanks.
much.
Amen to that.
Oh, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandparents were from Belarus and they
Uh-huh.
were Jewish. I'm
Mhm.
wondering what the religious breakdown is of that country now.
Oh, well, I've never been to Belarus, and I've actually
Okay.
wanted to visit,
Okay,
but can't now. Um,
all
so I
right,
wouldn't know.
okay,
I would figure that anyone from Belarus that was aligned with Russia would be Orthodox Catholic and not Jewish.
yeah, okay. So, and what was it like in Chernobyl? All Christian, all Catholic?
Um, well, they celebrate the Ukrainians celebrate the Orthodox calendar,
Okay,
and which falls under, I hate to say it, Russian Orthodox. They follow that whole calendar. And religion was one thing I didn't stop to ask.
okay,
Uh, I know there are Jewish settlers in Ukraine, but how many there are, I have no idea. I'm a recovering Catholic.
thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?